Good evening, everyone. Good evening. And welcome to the 2024 Palo Alto City Council Candidate Climate Forum. Thank you, everyone, both those in person and those tuning in over Zoom, for your attendance and engagement in democracy. My name is Avro Shah, and I am and have been a climate activist and organizer since I was in 3rd grade. It is my honor to be your MC for this forum tonight. I'm sure that all of you are looking forward to learning more about our City Council candidate climate goals tonight. But first, we would like to give a special thanks to the First Presbyterian Church of Palo Alto for hosting us tonight alongside of our co-hosts, 350 Palo Alto, First Presbyterian's Cool Planet Team, Palo Alto Forward, the Palo Alto Student Climate Coalition, and the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. We would also like to thank our event partners who have helped publicize this forum. I would like to introduce Reverend Tom Harris, who will be our moderator for tonight. He will be providing some opening remarks.
Good evening, everyone. As Avro said, and thank you, Avro, my name is Tom Harris. I'm the pastor here at First Presbyterian. Many thanks again to Silicon Valley 350 for hosting this. I know a ton of work went into making this happen. Thank you to all the candidates for being here. I think we have 100% of the candidates here tonight. A little bit about me and the church. I've been here about 6 months. Been at the church 6 months and been in Palo Alto about 6 months, moving from Baltimore. So I don't know anything about anything. And that's my excuse if anything goes wrong tonight. But in that spirit, many, many thanks to our AV crew tonight from First Presbyterian. Thank you to them for making Zoom happen. This congregation at First Presbyterian has a long history of advocating for climate justice. We understand that we as human beings have a responsibility, that we are stewards and caregivers and caretakers of this earth, and we feel called to do that work. We also at this church have a long history of advocating for the marginalized people of this world, and we know that those most affected by the current climate crisis are those who had the least to contribute to the problem becoming a problem, and often are the ones with the fewest resources to deal with the effects. So from multiple perspectives, we at this church believe that everything in our power must be done to address this climate emergency. So it's a privilege to be co-sponsoring, to be hosting you this evening, to be hosting these candidates. If you'd like to learn more about the church, check us out at our website, fpcpaloalto.org, or our Facebook page or Instagram page. Just a quick housekeeping items. If you need a restroom this evening, there are 2 all-gender restrooms in the back of the church. That room back there called the narthex, if you need that for a Jeopardy question or a crossword puzzle. If you need an exit at any time during this forum, you can probably go out the exact way you came in, but there's also exits on my right and on my left, as well as behind to the right and left of the window back there, there are exits. So with that, I think I'm supposed to turn it back over to Avro.
Thank you, Reverend Tom. I would like to go over a few instructions for both the audience and the candidates so that we can keep this forum space open and respectful. Firstly, to the audience, please refrain from applause or other reactions to candidate statements. Please be respectful. There will be time for a few audience questions after the first 5 questions. And if you have not turned in a question card but want to ask one, we will be collecting questions during the forum. Please pass any questions to row ends for collection. Furthermore, for those tuning in over Zoom, there will be an option to put questions into the chat. We will have people going through them and selecting questions. To the candidates, the moderator, Reverend Tom, We'll be giving instructions for each question. The questions will be given in alphabetical last name order for question number 1, and we will be moving down 2 names for each question for each subsequent question. Candidates will be able to give a brief closing statement after the audience question period. And with 9 candidates, we do have a tight schedule, so time limitations will be strictly enforced. There will be a running clock. There will not be a running clock. But we do have these 2 cards, 20 seconds. I'll hold one up. This yellow card, that's how you know you have 20 seconds. And when your time's up, this red card saying stop will be held up. Please adhere to these rules. Thank you. And with that, I'll hand things back to Reverend Tom.
All right, for our first question tonight, you have 2 minutes to answer this question, and those 2 minutes can include a brief introduction of yourself. We'll be starting with Pat Burt, and then you'll move to your left. I won't call on you each time, so you all know how to pass a microphone. Do speak into the mic so that folks on Zoom can hear you as well as people in the sanctuary. All right, so here's a question starting with Pat. What do you believe is the number 1 issue when it comes to combating climate change within Palo Alto, and how do you plan to address it?
I think the top issue is the transformation of our community from most people supporting the aggressive measures that we have to getting an overwhelming number of people to do so and to actually act on their role in it. As we've been going through since I came back on the council, and we really drastically accelerated our actions to achieve our 80-30 goal, 80% reduction in GHGs by 2030, we've really found that electrification of homes and businesses and the transportation system is now the complicated phase after we've gotten to where we are today of a 47% reduction in GHGs, which is nationally leading. But we have the remainder that we have to get to 80% reduction by 2030. It's much more multifaceted, and it requires really the community to know someone who has electrified, who's a friend, a neighbor, a family member, and it eases that real resistance that is there in many people. Those who have done it know that it has great benefits, and it's healthier. It's not only cleaner for the environment, but it's convenient. It's really a positive transformation, but change is something that many people are very apprehensive about. So we have now a comprehensive communications program that's being launched, along with a whole set of other measures in our climate program, a comprehensive EV strategy, a reliability and resiliency plan to make the system more reliable, which is one of the apprehensions of the community, that we're asking everybody to electrify, and we actually had a decline in reliability in recent years, and a whole other comprehensive strategy from there. Thanks.
Thank you all for everyone for being here. Thank you to all our local climate, housing, and transportation organizations for hosting. It is so good to be back at the church I used to work at. My name is Katie Causey. I've lived in Palo Alto my entire life, over 30 years. I'm a proud graduate of Ohlone, JLS, and Pali. I currently serve on Palo Alto's Human Relations Commission, helping ensure city policymaking is fair and equal. That includes serving on our climate change subcommittee and now on our housing, economic, and justice subcommittee. Professionally, I work with city governments along the peninsula on their street infrastructure, ensuring repairs happen quickly and it's safe for people to walk and bike, and that cities become greener and more climate-friendly communities. I'm running after serving in our housing nonprofits, and that is the number 1 way that our community is impacting climate is our jobs, housing, and balance. We have 100,000 people who commute here every day, and those cars on the road are the biggest way that we hurt the climate. So it is addressing our housing shortage that we help fight climate change. I'm endorsed by over 200 elected officials, community leaders, neighbors, and organizations such as the League of Conservation Voters, 350 SV Action, and our local housing organizations. Thank you all for being here tonight. And please excuse the fact that I'm wearing glasses. I got really injured last year, and it's very, very difficult for me to be under bright lights. So give me some grace. This is a house of grace.
Thank you. Good evening. It's very nice to see you all here tonight. I appreciate all of you coming together and the work that you do now and have done and will do in the future for Palo Alto. So having said that, I have lived in Palo Alto since 1967. I've been a proud renter, a proud homeowner, a proud worker in the city staff. I also now am the CEO of the Bay Area Sports Organizing Committee, and more about that a little bit later. I co-founded the American Basketball League, creating opportunities for all women, and I also am a 1960 Olympic Games member of the swimming team, proud to represent the United States of America. So having said that, I am excited to be running for office because I'm learning so much from all these wonderful people up here. So that's first. And second of all, I do believe now that climate change is the biggest thing that we have to address. It seems sometimes looking at it that it's insurmountable, that it's so much we have to do. And looking at the weather, we think, oh my gosh, are we ever going to make a difference? So I'm so proud of the city of Palo Alto for taking the steps that they have taken so far. I worry about the fact that those of us who are less resourced, I guess is the best way to say it, than others, are really intimidated by the move to electrification. And I'm really glad that the city has taken steps to help people, and I think we're going to have to do a lot more. So it is definitely a big crisis, one that we should measure all of our decisions by. How is this going to affect climate change? And then more importantly, what can we do as individuals to help the situation and ensure that we leave something for our grandchildren and for our children.
Thank you, Ann. I'm Henry Etzkowitz, a senior and a renter at Oak Creek Apartments, where 2 years ago Stanford tried to push us out when they acquired the complex. We pushed back, and we're still there, and we hope to remain. My first principle in addressing climate or any other issue is neighborliness. Neighborliness to our environment and to our neighbors in the surrounding cities. I listened on Monday night to the city council discuss the airport. And at the end, they decided to expand the runway by 100 acres, by 100 yards, by 100 yards. That was the issue they rallied around. Our neighbors in Glen Haven and East Palo Alto told of the lead that's raining down on their children. In the end, though they were listened to respectfully, they were not paid attention to. We must attend to our neighbors. We must close the airport and repair the environment. Return the airport to the Bay wetlands, expand Bixby Park by 100 acres. I have a series of specific steps like that we can take collectively as well as individually to beat climate change. Plant an urban forest along San Antonio. Don't build houses, zero height along San Antonio Road. Let's build University City on the Stanford Shopping Center. 10,000 living, working spaces. Let's take collective actions like this. Underground Caltrain. Build a linear park along that space. These are some of the ideas that I have. I'm a 50-year photovoltaics entrepreneur and advocate. Only 7% of Stanford roofs have photovoltaics. That has to be 100%. And we must do the same for all shopping centers and multi-family dwellings. Collectively, we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm George Liu, and I'm honored to be running for Palo Alto City Council. Just by way of introduction, I grew up in Millbrae, not so far away from here, and I was always constantly drawn to Palo Alto as a child. My parents took me here for Chinese school. That was often against my will. I came here to hang out as a teenager, but one of my early formative memories was my parents constantly taking me to open houses while I was in middle school so they could get my brother and I into Pali or a gun. And that really informs how I think about housing, which of course is a major environmental issue. I currently serve as a Planning and Transportation Commissioner, and I work professionally as a product manager at Meta working on content moderation. So the number one issue just facing our climate goals is transportation. That's the majority of our climate emissions. And while we have made amazing reductions so far, we still need to cut our climate emissions by over another 50% to actually get to our 2030 goals. That's just the way fractions work. While we've reduced significantly, and those reductions have been amazing, transportation is the largest bucket and our biggest opportunity. So there are a few prongs to this. Firstly, we need to electrify transportation. That goes into our overall grid modernization and electrification plans. We need to plan for housing. Like Katie said, we need to reduce commutes and build a more inclusive community and more vibrant community as well in the process. And we also need mode shift. We need to really invest in our cycling infrastructure, safe routes to school that are actually safe, and in the process, pull cars off of our streets. So I'm sure we'll cover these issues in much more detail. And thank you.
Hi, I'm Keith Rechtel. I've spent 12 years on commissions, first Parks and Rec, and then Planning and Transportation. And there I saw firsthand the effect of climate change, both in the Baylands, where we have the tide gate and the horizontal levee and the conservation plan, all having to deal with sea level rise. And up at Foothills Park, dealing with fire, how fire is getting faster and bigger, and we have to change how we evacuate people. We have to change what we do to prevent fire. And so, a very common desire is to make your kids have a better life than you did. But when it comes to climate, people just seem to ignore that, and that we are giving our kids a world that is rapidly warming, that's much worse than the world that we inherited, and that's a shame. And so we really have to make climate a very high priority. And so I think the biggest issue is normalizing electrification. Right now, 1 out of 3 cars in Palo Alto is electric, and we feel very good about that, right? But that still means that 2 out of 3 are still gas. And most houses do not have solar panels on top. And hot water heat pumps, even though we're having a successful program rolling it out, most hot water heaters are still gas. And so we really have to normalize electrification, and to the point where when you have a stove, you're thinking induction. You're not thinking gas at all. And that's going to be the biggest challenge. Now, that'll be tricky because, as Pat Burt mentioned, people don't like change. But in this case, we have a really big ally, and that's the pocketbook. A lot of these technologies are much better, much cheaper, and when the pocketbook is helping you, you're much more willing to do the right thing.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Greer Stone. I'm honored to be able to be the mayor of Palo Alto this year, finishing up my first term on the Palo Alto City Council. I'm also a teacher, lifelong member of the Palo Alto community, went to Duveneck Elementary, Green, graduated from Pali myself, taught in many of our schools, taught at JLS, Gunn, and Pali. I'm also a renter, and I've been serving this community since I was 23 years old, when I was on the Human Relations Commission, then moved to the Santa Clara County Human Rights Commission, and I'm honored to be able to be endorsed by many climate activists. I have the endorsement of the Sierra Club, Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, Supervisor Joe Simidian, Senator Josh Becker, and former mayors like Karen Holman, Liz Niss, Lainey Wheeler, Yuriko Kishimoto, and many others. For me, clearly one of the greatest issues that we're facing is climate change. It is the existential crisis of our generation, and an issue that's really important to me, of somebody who hopes to start a family soon, and of course having a lot of current students who are going to be impacted by this. But we do need to be able to have community buy-in, which is absolutely going to be critical if we're going to be able to advance a lot of the initiatives that we hope to achieve. And a lot of that is because the Ninth Circuit recently, removed our ability to be able to shut off natural gas as a city. And so we need to be able to make sure that our community members are also going to take advantage of various incentives that we can that we can use in order to be able to encourage them to also be able to move faster towards electrification. And I get all the time, why is it so important for Palo Alto to lead on these issues? And we are really seen around the world as world leaders on climate change. We hosted the Green Transition Summit back in February with the country of Sweden. And sorry, I see my time is up, so hopefully I'll get a chance to continue on that later. But thanks for being here.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Doria, and I want to thank Reverend Tom and Avro for their nice introductions and their work on this tonight. And I want to thank all of you for being here, and also those in Zoom land out there. Anyway, I am a 38-year resident of Chicago, of Palo Alto. I moved here from Chicago, and I instantly loved it here. I've always been fascinated by my natural surroundings. And when I moved here, everything is so different than Chicago. There's an ocean, not a lake. There's oak trees more than elm trees. And so I really immersed myself in the flora and fauna, as I like to say. But I was always interested in the environment. My town had the first recycling program in the greater Chicagoland area, as the newscasters say. And I also remember celebrating with my parents the first Earth Day. So I am very proud to have been able to serve this community on appointed boards and commissions for 17 years, ending up on my last year of the Planning and Transportation Commission, along with a few of the other candidates. And really, I ran 2 years ago. I'm really looking forward to serving you again. And I agree with everything that was said about our approach to climate crisis in Palo Alto and the importance of electrification. And I want to add a little something else to that. And I think it's really important that we don't leave people behind when we make that transition, because it is a very expensive transition that will not be easy for everyone to make. So let's make sure that we have ways to help people who have less money in this community stay here and be part of that green transition. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Carrie Templeton, and I'm running for Palo Alto City Council. Very nice to be here with my colleagues tonight and talk with you about environmental and climate issues. I have been here nearly 20 years, raised my family here, and my kids have gone to preschool family, Ohlone and Fletcher here in this wonderful city. And they learned about biking to school and being outside and learning to take care of the animals at the farm and all of the kind of values that we're talking about tonight. So it's really wonderful that that's part of our community as well. I have been, working for and endorsed by some climate giants from our area, including Joe Simidian and Josh Becker. And I learned a lot from working with them that I think is really important as we discuss how aggressively to take our ideas forward. And we should, because it's very important, as you heard tonight, with the ideas that were mentioned. I'm going to add one more that we haven't talked about yet, which I think we need to focus on upgrading our infrastructure for climate reasons. And what I mean by this is, we recently had a 100-year flood here that was very dangerous and threatened many homes, and was also dangerous for people walking by, people trying to get where they were going because the floods were exceeding the banks. They were not able to go under the bridges. And I know we're working on that, but that's not the only piece of infrastructure that needs to be improved. It's all related. So I would love to see that. And I would also like to see us restore our fire engines as we work on our utilities, and we're going to be at more and more risk, ever more risk about fires. So we need to make sure we have enough stations and they're staffed fully with the engines they need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for your answers to that question. Our second question, we're going to start with Anne and then move to the left. You have 90 seconds to answer this question for each of you. The climate crisis and the housing crisis are inextricably linked. Which land use policies or tools would you advocate to ensure real and equitable long-term emissions reductions? So starting with Anne.
Thank you very much for the question, and I would like to compliment finally the City Council for getting our housing element passed with the state. I think that's a great thing, and I'm looking forward to everybody in the community working together to make sure that good housing, excuse me, for everybody gets built quickly, that permits get facilitated and move faster, and that everybody in the community can come together to ensure that there is housing for all income levels.
So the link between housing and the environment is inextricable. Here's what we must do. Don't build on unbuilt lands. Principle number one, return these to the environment. We must plant an urban forest. Trees are the lungs of our city. We must increase the treescape. And then build on places that are already built and have retail and other infrastructure. So we have the Stanford Shopping Center, which is at the verge of disappearance because several of the stores there are bankrupt. It isn't well known, but just like the other shopping centers in the peninsula are transitioning from retail to mixed-use housing, we must act preemptively and work with Stanford to build housing on the shopping centers and the garages. Go high greenly in a few places. There's examples of greenery enveloping high housing structures in Brazil and other places. We must learn from them, learn from places that have addressed these issues. An urban forest in Rio de Janeiro has existed since the 19th century. Let's follow that here and forest the lands along San Antonio. Let's build the housing greenly. Let's go high. Let's photovoltaic electrify so that we have based our city on renewable energy sooner than the deadlines. So affordable housing, green space, that's my watchword.
Housing is one of the most important levers for our climate, and I'm committed to getting more housing, full stop, in Palo Alto. The best kind of housing is transit-oriented multifamily housing. That is the most climate effective, the most efficient in terms of not just emissions, but water and land use. It pulls housing into our community, prevents housing from sprawling out into neighboring suburbs, into farms, into foothills, and it concentrates housing near our key corridors like Cal Ave, downtown, El Camino, where we have a lot of resources. Housing is also a transportation issue. So there's a Turner Center study from Berkeley, which shows how one of the best things that we can do in Palo Alto is just build more housing, generally throughout the city. We have relatively low vehicle miles traveled. We have a really high percentage of trips taken within the city on bikes and walking. And this all sounds great. Housing is part of the solution, but we need political will to get there. We need to accept higher housing. We need to accept trade-offs on surface parking. And we need to elect candidates who really care about moving the ball forward on housing and climate together.
Yeah, we must build housing, must build dense housing, particularly near transit corridors. That's really important. But that's only half of it for the commute. The commute is only half. We also have to make sure if they're taking the train every day and then they're driving to Trader Joe's to get their groceries, that doesn't do any good either. So we have to make sure that we have co-locate both retail and housing nearby so they can walk and bike. And we should encourage bike lanes and make sure that our bike lanes coming from these transit centers are high quality so we can really minimize the number of car trips that these residents need to do. The other thing we have to do is we have to encourage sustainable building techniques, and that means things like low carbon concrete. If we're building high rises with traditional concrete, that has a lot of CO2 emissions. So we have to encourage or even require low carbon concrete to be built and encourage wood framing whenever possible. And then also we have to balance. The reason that people are driving is because we have such concentrations of jobs. We really need to make sure that the jobs are nearby the housing. That means that we can't have high density, like right now, Palo Alto has 3 times as many jobs as the rest of the residents. But Mountain View and Redwood City are all doing the same thing, and that's why everyone's on 101. So we really need to balance on each city that they have equal number of jobs and retail and residents.
Definitely, our housing policies are going to be key for us to also be able to not only achieve our arena numbers, which is a little over 6,000 units, but also our very ambitious 80 by 30 goal, which we're on a good pace to be able to achieve that goal. Right now, we're going to come about 9% short, but our SCAP committee and council has been very committed to making sure that we are achieving those. And I think some of the ways in which we're going to be able to get there as well is continue to prioritize and advance a lot of the housing policies, some of which that I've been a strong champion of on the Housing Ad Hoc Committee for the last couple of years. So one example is I championed the El Camino Real focus area, which re-examined zoning along El Camino. Right? We have a 50-foot height limit there. Well, we worked with developers to find out what are the impediments that are getting in the way of you actually being able to build this housing, and especially the affordable piece to it too. And through various exchanges, we were able to come up with a solution and a policy. So we have this El Camino Real focus area, allows for heights up to 85 feet, increased density, reduced parking standards, and in exchange, we're going to get 20% BMR units at 60%, at 80% AMI. But we already have a developer that has proposed a project that is going to yield 377 units, and 20% of those are at 60% AMI. That is true affordability, and that's going to be able to help us achieve these goals.
Thank you. Lots of good ideas already. I think there's additional things that we can do. And one thing that we can do is require better building practices, which there may be resistance in the development community because those are kind of specialized now and some of them are more expensive. I also think we need to concentrate on building housing in the research park and not building out 1 million more square feet, which is what they have there, of office, which will just exacerbate the problem of the jobs housing imbalance that my colleagues mentioned. I also think we want to retain walkable retail nearby housing centers. That means everywhere because there's housing all over Palo Alto currently. And I also think that we should put parking underground and build housing at grade. A trend for developers to propose projects that put parking at grade, 1 or maybe even more stories, because it's cheaper than putting parking underground. Doesn't really help when it takes up space where we could build housing. So those are just some of the things I would like to see. And I think I'll leave it at there for right now.
Yeah, I would like to talk about housing in a slightly different way than we have talked about, and hopefully it'll answer the question about zoning. But housing to me is, you've probably heard me say this, it's more than 4 walls and a roof. It is about somewhere that you're starting a life and that you want to enjoy your life and you want your children to enjoy their lives. And how do we do this in a way that reduces vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gases and those kinds of things we're trying to avoid? And there are many ways, we've heard some spoken about tonight. One we haven't talked about in more detail is about making sure that we're zoning for the experiences outside the home as well. So where are you going on date night? Or where are your kids going to go for their after school program? How many miles away are you having to drive to get that because it's not affordable in Palo Alto anymore? And how many miles do you go for the Friday night activities you're going with your family or with your friends? If I talk to the young people that are working with my team and that I know, they're going to Redwood City, they're going to Mountain View, they're driving, right? They're going far away. So we want to find a way to build all the new homes we've agreed to build and make sure we're incorporating things to do around Palo Alto as well so that we don't have to drive to go and have a good time. Thank you.
Well, the question was what we can do with housing to address our climate change issues. So first, in terms of vehicle miles traveled in the community, my wife Sally and I have almost zero because we ride our bikes everywhere and we love it. And this is a great community for that. It's not for everyone, but for those who can and are able, it's really a great part of a lifestyle. It's healthy, and it is really a great climate impact. But I think there are really three areas that I'd point out the most on the housing part. First, we're going to have 6,000 new housing units, which is a nearly 25% increase in our housing stock. And those new units need to be built sustainably and all electric. The Berkeley decision prohibited us from banning electric, but we came right back with what's called the One Margin program, which is such a strong scale of incentives that almost no one will do anything other than do electric. So we have a solution to that. Second, I'd say that the transit-oriented development is critical. I'm on the boards of Caltrain and VTA, and electrification of that is really important. And then lastly, and I'll look for an opportunity to talk about this a little bit more later, but it is the construction materials that are more significant than the transportation part.
As the last person commenting on this, there's been a lot of good answers, so I'll just speak to my personal experience. I live in dense housing downtown where there is no parking because the building is 100 years old. And guess what? Almost nobody in my building owns a car because all of us can walk and bike, and everything we need is right within our community, and we're right by public transit. And that's exactly what I'm focused on, is more dense housing near public transit. I'm also focused on streamlined review of housing projects that limit the number of hearings on a project, and I'm the only candidate up here endorsed by the Attorney General, who plays a big role in ensuring our cities are meeting their housing goals, because he really trusts that I can help us get those policies in place.
All right, thank you, everybody. Moving on to question number 3. This is another 90-second answer for each of you. And George, you're going to get the first crack at this one. What will you do to ensure that, as residents transition away from gas appliances, the gas infrastructure cost burden does not fall on lower income residents?
That's a great question. I do worry about the equity impacts of our electrification programs. We're very focused on single-family homes, and I think that makes a lot of sense. That is where we can, in many cases, find easier solutions in terms of engineering, in terms of city processes and things like that. But we have to make sure that renters and also multifamily units are not left behind. And there are challenges here. Our incentives are more in the early stages for multifamily homes, and we haven't really figured out financing for families who rent. So we need to really prioritize our subsidies and our resources and catch those units up more aggressively as a key part of our 80 by 30 goals, so we can actually do this equitably, and so the burden doesn't end up falling in the end on the people with the least resources. As we move along this journey, I would be open for more subsidies and a more gradual transition process for those less advantaged folks. And yeah, we just need to move equitably and prioritize that starting today.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, one of the big advantages of electrification is that the pocketbook helps you, is that once you get this installed, the ongoing costs are much lower. And that, especially in Palo Alto, with our utility giving half the cost of PG&E. And that's a huge lever. That means that we can do things like no interest loans, and you actually can pay back the difference with the savings that you have by these more efficient electric appliances. So that really gives us a lot more latitude to encourage electrification without an outright incentive. But we also have to consider that, like right now, heat pump water heaters with the city incentive are cheaper than a gas water heater. I just had one installed, and I'm saving money every month. And so that's pure savings. When we now move on to the heat pump for the whole house, we may not be able to do that. But if we do have low interest loans or no interest loans, we still can be advantageous for everyone. But if there are cases where the low income people are not able to pay that money up front and they don't get the advantage of having these ongoing lower costs, then we have to have some type of income-based incentives.
Well, I appreciate the question. This is, the issue of equity is one that I've been working on, again, for a very long time, since my time on the Palo Alto Human Relations Commission, on the County Human Rights Commission, and now on council. And this is a particular issue that is also concerning for me as well, because both my wife and I rent a small bedroom, 1-bedroom apartment, a very old apartment here in Palo Alto. And all of our appliances are gas. We have no control over being able to replace those. That's completely with the landlord, and the landlord's not going to make any of those type of improvements. And we all know the added health risks to having gas appliances within the home, with significant increase of asthma, especially if you have small children in the home. And so that's a big concern. So how are we going to not only help these lower income families, but also multifamily housing be able to transition over to electric? That's going to be key. I think we need to be able to offer additional incentives to multifamily to be able to upgrade, so then those families don't end up having to have that higher bill when most of the community starts to transition. I think we also need to work more with the state and federal government for grants to be able to help that. And we own our own utility rate, so we can be in control of reducing those utility rates for low-income payers when we get to that point.
So the good and the bad news for everybody is that our appliances do not last for forever, especially hot water heaters, which are irritatingly short-lived to me. So I think that I think we're going to have to find ways to incentivize particularly landlords, but also homeowners, to replace with electric appliances. And I think that's going to become easier as this transition moves along. Right now, things are a little limited. I actually would have to put an addition on my home to change to a heat pump hot water heater. And I don't have a basement, I don't have a garage, and I don't have an attic. So it's not always a simple switch out we're finding. But I think that we need to make sure, I don't know, a couple things might happen. At some point, there might be sort of a tipping point where gas becomes so much more expensive that it is less desirable, and it might become kind of a luxury thing, which would be almost good unless you're stuck with old gas appliances. So we're going to have to find a way to have those situations reportable and a way to incentivize them to be replaced when a landlord doesn't want to, maybe it's not at the end of its life, or find some way to subsidize the process for both landlords and homeowners.
All right. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question that Reverend Tom asks, and I appreciate the comments so far. Just to focus on the lower income folks and how to do this in a way that would harm them the least is an interesting point that we should discuss. So I would say incentives are a tricky beast, especially in climate discussions. Sometimes they work, but they can't go far enough. And so we have to think about what can we do, to use a phrase that Ann Cribb said the other day, the carrot and the stick, right? We have the carrot or the incentives, but what is the stick for people that might be loath to change over, like landlords of larger properties or something like that. And I think we'd have to be very careful about using that, but if we do find that there's a particular group that is reluctant to switch over to a healthier for the environment and healthier for the tenant utility situation, then we'd have to really take a serious look at that. And how can we as a council encourage them to do the right thing? And sometimes that's a policy change. So that's something we should investigate. Thank you.
Well, there are really two major segments to this multifamily housing dilemma. One is the market rate housing, and the other is our deed restricted affordable housing, that is subsidized housing, low income. We actually have the highest percentage of deed restricted affordable housing in the entire county. We in Gilroy are tied for at the forefront, which also means we have 2,500 and growing of those units that really need additional subsidies rather than just the broader incentive programs. We also have a dilemma that the landlord, as Greer alluded to, has to put in most cases, the investment, and the tenant gets the benefit. And so how do we solve that dilemma? Well, we have right now coming to a fruition a funding plan for our comprehensive remainder of our greenhouse gas reduction program. And within that, we're identifying the total dollars that we're going to need to get to our goals, and this is one of the main parts. So out of that, we can end up, I believe, with a combination of programs similar to what we did with seismic upgrades. Basically, strong incentives combined with mandates. I believe that we'll get to a point soon where we will say, here is the time horizon at which you must convert, but here are the subsidies and incentives to do it at the multifamily level.
So in order to address this effectively, we need the right data. When I was working in housing nonprofits, one of the things that I helped advocate for is a rental registry, which has now been implemented. And whoever is elected will play a big role on what we do with that rental registry data. And that data is going to be really essential to identifying the needs of multifamily homes switching over to electric. On the Human Relations Commission, I've helped on our climate change subcommittee with the research on where are the communities struggling with this transition. And now it's something we're continuing research on our housing, economic, and development. This committee has a long title, Housing, Economic Justice, and Development Subcommittee of the Human Relations Commission. We're continuing that research. And stay tuned, we may be doing some joint work with the Utilities Commission to help make sure that we are doing this equitably and that those communities aren't being left behind.
Well, as I said earlier, I am very concerned about the ability of everybody to be able to afford or create a situation where they can enjoy electrification of their homes, whether it's multifamily or whether it's single family. And I think we absolutely have to look at subsidies, also the low interest and no interest loans. I think that the community can come together and we can provide education about how important it is for everybody to make this change from a health perspective. And then I think we need to tell the stories of the people who have been successful and who are saving money at the end of the day. And that will help us work together and praise people who actually have made the change. It's not going to be easy.
So I moved to Oak Creek so I could be in walking distance of where I was working at Stanford University. And I was amazed in walking around Stanford to see there were no solar panels on the roofs of the buildings. How could this be at the world's most technologically advanced university? And then when I went home to Oak Creek, the flat roofs were also empty, no solar cells. How could this be in Palo Alto, the leading center of innovation in the world? So there's something missing that we must change, and that is we must think of how we can make renewable energy the priority for every building in the city, not only on the roofs, but photovoltaics in the windows. All this is technically available. It's available from Anderson Windows, but how many know about this? We must put in place plans that will allow us to transit from the current electrical system to one based on renewable energy, which in the long run can earn money for the university and for the buildings to not only supply their own electricity, but return it to the grid and earn funds. So this is the way that we have to think systematically on a large scale, working with the university that has the resources in place that are not yet being put. Stanford is still focused on carbon capture, not on solar cells. We must change that.
All right, thank you, everybody. Question number 4, another 90-second question. And Greer, you're going to get the first crack at this one. More than 2,000 new housing units are proposed in the San Antonio area, but there is limited bike and pedestrian infrastructure there. What immediate bike pedestrian improvements would you advocate for?
Well, fortunately, we have such an incredible bicycle coalition here in Palo Alto that ensuring that they have a seat at the table, which I think this council has been absolutely that has been able to kind of embrace that expertise, and so making sure that we are working with that bicycle coalition, so we are making these plans happen, because of course those 2,000 units are not going to happen overnight. It is going to be a phased process. It's going to take a while. We are working on a coordinated area plan for San Antonio. So we're at the beginning of those stages, and so making sure that a part of that plan is including a very robust bike boulevard is going to be key. I mean, Palo Alto is one of the most bikeable cities within the country. We received an award within, I think, the last year or so on that. I mean, we're oftentimes awarded for that. So ensuring that we are able to have that bike boulevard. And also, since we have this new Palo Alto Home Key project that's on the other side of San Antonio, making sure that we can now expand that bike boulevard to be able to connect those incoming residents. Project's about 50% of the way done right now, ensuring that those residents can then be able to access the parks and other community services that we have in Palo Alto, hopefully with the Cupperly Community Center as well. I mean, that's going to be an area, really kind of a new neighborhood in Palo Alto. It provides so many incredible opportunities, but making sure that it's multimodal and safe for everybody absolutely needs to be number one priority in that project.
So, yeah, I've been very worried about the San Antonio area because it's a great opportunity to put higher buildings, taller buildings with more housing units than we could put in some other places easier because it doesn't abut anybody else's existing neighborhood. But I was very concerned that we weren't doing the coordinated area plan first, but we were kind of in a bind to designate places because of the way the state housing element was structured. So I would have preferred to have even slightly taller buildings there and work out a deal with all of those buildings along San Antonio to have a protected bike path there. San Antonio gets very bad traffic because a lot of people are still commuting on 101. So I think we have to do the best that we can now to use all the technology and creativity available to have safe bike lanes there, but I think it's going to be hard, to be honest, because these streets were designed before there was a notion that they should be multimodal, and now that's what we really prioritize. In addition, I would like to make sure that we get enough parks and safe ways for people to enjoy the outdoors in that area, because what we find is that the developers there do not want to provide much in the way of shared open space on their sites or personal open space. And people even need to have a place to put their bicycles. You know, if a whole family is living there in a relatively small space, we want to make sure they have a place to put their bikes. So all of those things are very, very important as we plan.
You can tell that the planning commissioners have definitely been talking about this area. So I think it's a great question and a great opportunity for us to discuss our priorities. I think I like to tell stories. I'm going to start this one off with a story. When I first moved here, I started off working in Google, and I ended up staying there for 10 years. But on my first week, I biked in from Palo Alto, and of course, I'm going down Charleston and down San Antonio because I didn't know about the bike bridge yet, and that was probably one of the most harrowing experiences I've ever had on a bike. So if you know, then you know. That's why we're talking about this. And you imagine if we put a lot of housing there, we're going to have some kids also biking on San Antonio. And can you even imagine how frightening that could be? So we need to make sure that we do think about the future of this space. I know we just remodeled that street probably a couple of years ago, five or so years ago, but we didn't put in bike lanes. It was unthinkable at the time. And now that we're talking about adding in so many homes there, we need to think about it very seriously, and safety needs to come first. So I hope that we get this right. I definitely want to focus on bike lanes, safe crossing, and I agree that we need to think about the open space as well, because it's currently very industrial. Thank you very much.
So several folks have spoken about area plans or coordinated area plans is the way to look comprehensively at a new development and not just park thousands of units that aren't a community, that don't have transit, local retail, and the pedestrian bike infrastructure. And that's what we're going to do there. I'm very familiar with that process. The model has been the SOFA plan in this neighborhood, which I led. Now, that's how I got started in community involvement 30 years ago. We had affordable housing, we had a walkable community, we had daycare, and a wonderful park that came out of that. That's the sort of thing that we need to do. Specifically on the biking, we have now the completion of the Charleston corridor and Rastradero Charleston Bikeway, which I fought for in 2022 to redirect capital improvement funds. They were not going to go forward with it, and I battled, and we got it, and got it complete after a long wait on that. We need increased transit use in the corridor. VTA needs to expand their bus system in that corridor to what is now a really viable train station. San Antonio will go from 1 train an hour most of the time to doubling that in a longer period of time throughout the day. So all this can be knit together. Lastly, we need to have easements on all the developments for the bikeway.
So I professionally work with cities on their bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, particularly with identifying high collision areas and how to improve the infrastructure in those areas. And as all candidates have said, we're absolutely going to need to invest in that infrastructure in that area. This feels very personal to me because this is right near the neighborhood that I grew up, and why I prioritize us building housing near public transit, near our downtowns, because when you are that far out, the biggest issue we hear is that people feel disconnected to the community. I had to own a car when I was living that far out, and so this is going to have to be a big investment in making sure these new neighbors are connected to the city, that they have that green space, that they have safe, protected bike lanes to get around, and public transit lines to get to the rest of the city.
Thank you. Palo Alto has a long history of bicycling and bicycle advocates. Think about Ellen Fletcher and the work that she did in getting to have Bryant be the bicycle boulevard initially in town. I think it's really important as we have more housing and more people biking, and that we really listen to the bicycle population. We spend a lot of time at the Recreation Commission hearing from the bicyclists about what's appropriate, what they need. I also think that it's going to be very important to continue to educate kids, both through our bicycle programs at school and also through some independent programs, to make sure that everybody's safe, both on the bicycle and off the bicycle. And I think it's going to be incredibly important for the bicycle community themselves to follow the rules of biking and not surprise people as they come in and out of the intersections and that kind of thing. I love it that so many people are biking to and from work and to and from meetings. I wish I were one of them, but I had a horrendous bicycle accident from something on a sidewalk, and so I'm not able to bike anymore. But to those who do, congratulations, it's great.
So we're here tonight for climate change and the environment. So let's think about how we can make that our priority in the city. To do that, we need to expand our green space, not build on unbuilt lands. We must turn those lands into parks and forests. San Antonio Corridor is our opportunity to plant an urban forest, to create the lungs of the future for our city. Let's build the housing on already built areas like the Stanford Shopping Center, on the parking garages and the parking lots, not on unbuilt lands. Let's make those unbuilt lands into parks and forests and keep Palo Alto green forever. Thank you.
This one. So we have to start with an area plan. Folks are absolutely right. We need a phased approach. And there actually are some good concepts from a student working group that we had that actually pulled a lot of community feedback about a San Antonio corridor plan. I will say that we should have seen this coming. San Antonio was one of the focal points for a housing element for several years now, and we're only now putting out an area plan for bids. So we have to move faster. Our latest area plan, the North Ventura Coordinated Area Plan, took 7 years, which was simply too long. A lot of the key decisions, Fry Site, El Camino, in the housing element sites inventory, were already made. And it's not so simple as that. The MVCAP, of course, informed those decisions and so on. But we can't let this happen in San Antonio. I know we're committed to doing this plan much more quickly, but we really need full buy-in on getting better transportation options as soon as possible. So we need bike lanes, we need bus access. We, of course, will also have our Palo Alto link to serve that area. And we also need to consider special setbacks. We have a special setback that we request from developers along San Antonio. A couple of the developments have already respected that, but we need to think about other special setbacks and other planning as soon as we possibly can before we run out of time.
I really do have mixed feelings about San Antonio. If you drive down there, you look around, you say, this is a terrible place for housing. But then you look across the freeway and you see Google office after Google office after Google office, and you say, this is a great place for housing. And so if we have a really good bike lane from that area over to our new bike bridge, and if we collaborate with Mountain View and have a good bike lane over to Rengsdorf, there can be a lot of Google engineers who are living there and biking to work every day. And that's great for them and it's great for us. So this really has the potential for being a great neighborhood. But then we also have to tie into other parts of the city. You know, the kids are gonna go wanna play with their friends who may be over at Green Meadow. And that neck of the woods does not have very good bike lanes today. We have to have better bike lanes down San Antonio, down Charleston, and we really have to connect into the bike network. We have such a great bike network that once you connect in, then you can go across the whole city. But it's so isolated that it's not gonna be trivial to do that. The other thing is that the area plan. SOFA was a very good situation because you had one major landowner, and that made the planning much easier. I was on North Ventura. It didn't take 7 years, it took 2 years. But still, that took too long. And the problem being is that when you have multiple landowners, you can't get buy-in nearly as easily when you have a single landowner. So we should find all the things that we did poorly on NVCAP and fix them this time around.
Thank you all. Okay, we have this next question, and then after each of you answer it, we have the audience questions to ask. This is another 90-second question, and Carrie, you're going to be first on this one. Palo Alto's Sustainability Climate Action Plan calls for reducing greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2030. Right now, we are not on track to meet this goal. What current policies would you strengthen, and what new policies would you introduce to ensure we meet the goal?
Start by using the microphone. Thank you for the question. The Sustainability and Climate Action Plan is a very good product, a good document, I guess I will say. But to focus specifically on the greenhouse gas reduction, we need to get more people using public transit, and we need those transit vehicles to be more electric. So I think the VTA and the Caltrain are working on electrifying their fleet. So we need to think about how to get more people using those for travel. And it's complicated because Palo Alto is not the primary focus of either of those organizations, right? They're thinking about, well, you can get from San Jose to San Francisco, and that's a whole different boat, or you can get around San Jose very easily, but we're here at the north part of the county, and we just don't have as much use of the public transit as we could. That said, I have had an opportunity to live in other big cities, big as ours, that public transit was really common. And I think we can work on ways to make that more common here. And one of the ideas I've had is to get the young people bus passes one way or the other, either through Stanford or through PAUSD, so that they're encouraged they're encouraged to use more public transit. Thank you.
Well, first, I hope everyone appreciates that our goals of 80% reduction by 2030 and the goal that we now have adopted of 100% carbon neutrality by 2030 are leading goals not only in the US, but internationally. That doesn't make it easy. But we have this incredible foundation. When I was first on the council, we went and built off of our renewable portfolio and responded to a recommendation from Carbon Free Palo Alto that we could get to 100% carbon neutral electricity at very competitive pricing. Today, we are at that since 2016, and we are 50% below PG&E on pricing. So that is an incredible foundation. We've already gotten 47% reduction out of the 80% we need to get to. The remainder is much more complicated, but it is achievable. We now have, when I came back on the council, there had really been a lack of progress from our adoption of that plan. We had done a number of pilot programs. We were ahead of almost any other city, but we didn't have a strategic approach to getting to the goal. We now do have that. We are in the midst of a reliability and resiliency strategic plan, a funding strategic plan, a communication strategic plan, a distributed energy strategic plan, and all those together are going to take the path to actually go to the 80% by 2030.
In terms of a policy I would strengthen, it's definitely our bicycle and pedestrian plans. We need to get a lot more people using active transportation to meet our SCAP goals. And to do that, you need the infrastructure. That means strengthening our plans, particularly our long-term plans for El Camino Real. In terms of a new policy, I am really trying to see what we can do to use our rental registry data to identify switching, make it easier to switch to electric for our multifamily homes. I would also support a sunset date for natural gas, help motivate more people to make that switch. And while I'm in front of a lot of voters, because our SCAP goals are big goals, please vote yes on Prop 4. It is a massive amount of funding for climate resiliency in the Bay Area, including $85 million for the Bay Area for investment on sea level rise infrastructure and flood infrastructure.
Thank you. So these goals are very aggressive, and I think it's good. It's good to have a stretch goal, especially in a community like Palo Alto. I really think it's important to get people to try public transportation. A lot of people don't use public transportation at all, and there are some creative ways to do that, which we'd used earlier in the city. One called in the 1980s, Leave Your Car at Home Where day where everybody pledged to leave their car at home 1 day a week and actually signed a pledge, and there were raffles, and we had a lot of fun doing it and made it fun. And a lot of people got on public transportation because of that. I'm really excited about the train and the electrification, and I hope that you're all going to be at the train station at 2 o'clock on Saturday to take a ride on the new train. Having people, when they go to a special event, and giving them a badge or a pass, and allowing the transit companies, or making sure that they allow people to get on for free, causes a lot of excitement about transit, and many people who have never been again on transit will try that and make it work and maybe come back again.
So here's the deal. How are we going to do this without making more green space? I'll start with a small point. There's ballot measure 4, which is going to take 0.33 acres away from El Camino Park. Vote against it. Keep the park intact. Close the airport. It's spewing carbon and fuel into the environment, and especially on our neighbors. Let's be neighborly in an environmental way. Let's not do that. Let's close the airport and return it to the bay. On transportation, there is a transportation system already in place. It's run by Stanford University called the Marguerite, which goes around the campus and into the city a bit. Let's work with Stanford to expand the Marguerite to go all around Palo Alto. There's an infrastructure in place. There's parking lots for the buses. Why duplicate that? Why not take advantage of that? Bring the business community together with Stanford and the city and make the Marguerite ride all around Palo Alto for free. And then we must seriously think about redesigning our housing plans so that we can expand green space, make the San Antonio corridor our national park, our lungs for Palo Alto. Don't build there. Build on the parking garages and parking lots.
Thank you.
We absolutely need a full court press to actually get to our 80 by 30 goals. So I support all of the city's programs, which are well thought out and funded and scoped well. I think some of the outcomes that our staff and team have basically, in our city have basically defined, are very focused on EV and EV adoption and EV for commutes. They're very focused on electrification for single family homes. And these are all great programs, and there is consideration of other programs, of course, but I think some of those get a little bit underrated. So housing, building more housing, as discussed earlier, supporting multifamily and also rental housing transition to fully electric, mode shift, and really investing in safe streets. And also, I also do support a natural gas sunset date. Currently, our projections rely in some significant part on carbon offsets to hit our 20 by 30 goals. Some of those are kind of complicated, built into state regulations, how we use gas and so on. But to really set an example and to really be an ambitious city, we need to pull up some of those underrated programs and really try to get to as ambitious 80 by 30 goal as we can.
Yeah, the two big areas are our use of natural gas and our use of gasoline. And so those are two separate issues. The natural gas is a lot easier because we own our own utilities. It's much easier to control what our customers do. We've done this already with heat pump water heaters, and we have to go up the learning curve on that. We have to expand that to whole house electrification. We have to use those same techniques that worked well with the water heaters and expand that. We also have to have time of use pricing that will give us a further incentive to get away from gas, because then during the day when your solar panels are producing heat, it's going to be much, much cheaper. So that's the easier part. The harder part is on the gasoline side. We really have to encourage EV adoption. And I mentioned earlier, 2 out of the 3 cars in Palo Alto are still a gasoline. And one reason for that is multifamily EV chargers are difficult. And we have to really incentivize landlords to have EV charging for their renters. We also have to improve bike and ped connections because every car trip that you don't take is one that it won't be used gasoline. And finally, mass transit. One of the biggest reasons people don't use mass transit is that it's inconvenient. If we increase the convenience of mass transit, we'll increase the ridership.
Well, first, I think we should definitely celebrate the accomplishments that Palo Alto has achieved in this space. I mean, in 1990, we were at 14 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per resident. Today, we are at 5.4. The California Air Resources Board has said that cities need to be at 6 metric tons by 2030. We reached that by 2020. So this is a community that is absolutely dedicated to being able to achieve our 80 by 30 goals. And that's not just thanks to council's leadership on this and staff and PTC, but also all of you that have been champions of it. And it really helps make this an easier thing to be able to do. And as I said before, we are recognized around the world as leaders in this space, and other countries actually look towards us. I mentioned we hosted the Green Transition Summit with the nation of Sweden and in partnership with the state of California back in February to be able to bring people together to further have these discussions on how we can improve it. I agree with a lot of what has been said as far as transportation. We need more public EV infrastructure. We need more multifamily EV infrastructure. I purchased an electric vehicle a couple years ago. I live in an apartment that doesn't have that, but I felt comfortable knowing that Palo Alto had invested in a very robust public infrastructure process. I think we can do more. I want to have conversations with private property owners like at Safeway. What a great place while you're in there shopping for your groceries to be able to charge your car.
Thank you, and a lot of great ideas. So I'll just continue by saying that I think the achievements that we have made so far as a community, we've worked together to do that. I agree with the mayor. It's really, really great, but it doesn't mean we stop. It means we work even harder. So the SCAP acknowledges the importance of our urban canopy, and I'd like to talk about that for a second, or emphasize that. We need more. We need to maintain our urban canopy, and we need to grow it. We need particularly to grow it in Southeast Palo Alto, where we don't have enough trees. We don't need an expansion of the airport. We don't need building and paving in our city parks. We do need better VTA service, especially again in Southeast Palo Alto. We need to grow parks and open space as much as we possibly can. I'd like to see the Army Corps of Engineers back here before 2060 to reassess their evaluation of our needs for levee to protect our baylands and some of our neighborhoods. And finally, I will agree with Henry. I have said for a very long time that Stanford knows how to operate a great electric shuttle system, and we should get them to expand it citywide. And I will end ahead of time on that.
Thank you, Doria. You anticipated some of the audience questions, but we're going to get to these now. This is the audience question time of the evening. The rules are changing. 60 seconds per candidate. So this is the lightning round. Please raise your hand if you would like to answer the question, but don't raise it until I finish the question. We will try to have you answer in the order your hands were raised. In order to get to as many questions as possible, please feel free to simply agree with the previous speaker rather than use your full 60 seconds. All right. We've received several questions about trees and balancing a need to protect our urban forest. See, I said not till I finish the question. Okay. Balancing need to protect our urban forest while building more housing units. Would you like to comment on that? Yes. And then
Certainly would.
Henry, Kari, and then Pat.
That's my priority. Give us better lungs. Don't build on unbuilt lands. Return them to the environment. Urban forest on San Antonio, Baylands, where the airport is. That's what we must do if we're serious about climate change. We must make major changes, not only as individuals, but as a city. And these are some of the changes we can make. We have control over the land of the airport. We can say we want to go back to Baylands. We have control over the San Antonio corridor. We can say plant an urban forest. But to do that, do the housing, we have to work with Stanford to cooperatively build the housing with their free land and our expertise and the venture capital community, bring them home from Solano. Build California forever on the peninsula, on the shopping centers, including the Stanford Shopping Center. That's where our future housing should be. Go greenly high.
Carrie, and then Pat, and then Greer.
I guess I'm a little perplexed about the premise of the question because you can have housing with trees. And as someone who grew up in Atlanta, which is carved out of the middle of a forest, and we have trees all around and we don't have to cut them all down to build houses. That's kind of how I started thinking about it. And then moving here to Palo Alto, we're very rich in trees, and that's one of the most attractive things about it. So I would encourage anyone who's working on development projects here in Palo Alto to retain as many trees and plant as many trees as they possibly can. Thank you.
Yes, so our urban forest is actually part of our sustainability and climate action plan to expand it. So it is an explicit part of what we're doing right now. But I would say that we need to not just have an increase, but we really need to look at where in the communities and the surrounding communities it's most in need. South Palo Alto has historically had less of a canopy than North Palo Alto, and that's our concentration area. On top of that, East Palo Alto has been really devoid of the canopy that we've had, and our local group Canopy has been a leader now in East Palo Alto. Lastly, it's not merely the vegetation, but it's the natural ecosystem and the cooling that we get from this. That's why a number of years ago, I was able to put through with Karen Holman that our default on commercial landscaping now is indigenous landscaping, which is extremely important for an ecosystem building and not just trees.
Greer, Doria, and then Ann.
Yeah, the carbon sequestration of trees is so critical to our ability to be able to achieve our SCAP goals. And not only does this help us be able to achieve those goals, but also makes Palo Alto the incredible place that it is to live. I went to school in Southern California, in Orange County. Beautiful place, but not that many trees. And whenever my friends come up to Palo Alto and visit, that is the first thing that they are always so impressed by. It's not the tech companies or anything else, it's our tree canopy. And we work to protect that tree canopy. We updated our tree ordinance for the first time in 20 years, bringing it more consistent with some other communities. But then, thanks to some advocacy, John Kelly, for example, reached out and pointed out a flaw in the ordinance that could have prevented some ADU implementation, and the council was able to take that feedback and be able to modify the ordinance so that we are able to have this balance of protecting our tree canopy and ensuring proper housing.
Doria, Ann, and then George.
So I'll just add, I was on the group that worked on rewriting the tree ordinance, which had not been updated in over 25 years, I believe. And just a tiny quibble is it's that the consistency with the state ADU laws was not explicitly stated in our tree ordinance, and we felt it was important to add it in to make it really clear, but it was always there, it was always the law that took precedent. But I would like to also add that it's very important to remember that we plant a lot of trees in city property. And those can even be little parking strips between where you put a car or a through lane, or we hope a bike lane, and the sidewalk. So it's really important to remember that. And also setbacks, the part of the property that you can't build on because you need a little space. It's really important to remember that we need to put trees in the setbacks on private property.
Ann? George?
Yes, I'm so glad we're talking about trees because they're so important to Palo Alto. And we would be remiss certainly not to talk about Canopy, the great organization that does so much for trees and people in Palo Alto, and also in East Palo Alto. So more trees definitely in South Palo Alto and in our parks.
George?
Yeah, I'm proud to be endorsed by Susan Rosenberg, one of the co-founders of Canopy, and I really believe that this is not a trade-off. We need to work with Canopy, we need to grow our canopy, we need to preserve our canopy. We have a great tree ordinance that does balance housing and trees and gives people the flexibility to protect their housing and build ADUs and also preserve native species and offset any trees that cut down with more plantings. We also have good requirements for new developments. Multifamily developments have some green space and some open space. We could potentially strengthen those. And yeah, I don't see a trade-off. We need to absolutely commit and care and prioritize trees.
Keith?
Yeah, trees are a huge quality of life issue. They cool it, just the look and feel. Your property value goes up if you have healthy trees around. It's very important. And there's also the carbon storage issue. And so we really need to encourage it. And I'll have two things. One, I'm in South Palo Alto. We have a lot of rolled curbs down there. We don't have the planting strips. And for street trees, that becomes a really big challenge. We have to work now with the landowners to encourage them to plant along their side of the sidewalk. We also have to look at other things like bulb outs that we can put in that can have trees near that rolled curb without affecting parking, without affecting bike lanes. That's really tricky. And the second thing is PAUSD has a lot of land where they have like concrete, and you could line that with trees and have very little impact to use of that concrete and add a lot of trees and a lot of canopy.
Katie?
I'm going to agree with George and Carrie. This is not a trade-off. There are cities all over the world, in Europe and Mexico, where they have dense downtown housing and they're incredibly green and lush. We actually don't even need to look that far because when you look at downtown Mountain View, Castro Street is beautiful, thick with trees and with housing.
All righty, thank you all. Comments or question about the airport? Can you comment on the compatibility of continuing to enable a general aviation airport in Palo Alto with sustainability goals? You had your hand up before I finished the question, but you can go because nobody else has their hand up. Go for it.
The two are absolutely incompatible. You cannot have an airport spewing fumes and lead on our neighbors and be sustainable. So we must close the airport as our #1 city priority this year. I'd like to come back to this forum next year and see that the airport is wetlands. Jackhammer that runway. Keep a stub of it as basketball courts and an emergency helipad, but give the airport back to the bay. It belongs to the ducks. They should rule the airport.
Pat?
There's plenty of space for general aviation on Moffett Field. We should work with the pilots to help move them to safe dual runways that already exist in a defederalized airport made possible by Representative Eshoo.
So we actually have an opportunity to transform our airport into a sustainability model. This last year, a consortium of companies that are involved with electrification of airports and zero emissions came forward to us. Vice Mayor Lowing and I have been meeting with them and our city staff, and this is the future of our airport. They've identified Palo Alto's airport as to be the first in the country to really move toward sustainability. We already have lead-free fuel. It's going to be expanded, but the real future is zero-emission vehicles at the airport, just like we've done as leaders in Tesla adoption here. Our planes will be the first there. Solarization at the airport, the advanced charging there, a microgrid that would charge it all, and less pollution, less noise. The airport industry is on the cusp of a transformation.
Greer, and then
This issue came before the city council on Monday. We did not advance an expansion of the airport. It was a very good, robust discussion, and a lot of community members came out. I think it's questionable whether we could even close the airport if we wanted to under FAA guidelines and a lot of other complications with that. But we do have control over expansion. I'm not in favor of expanding. I think we can work within our existing footprint to make the airport more EV friendly, more climate friendly. But it's just unconscionable that East Palo Alto and Menlo Park does not have a seat at the table when the flights are flying over those communities. We have the 19th highest lead polluting airport in the country. And you probably all remember Hillview Reed Airport in Santa Clara County came out a couple years ago with a report about levels of lead in children near that airport. They are ranked like 36th. So we don't need to expand it and make this problem worse.
Keith.
Yeah, the airport is in a very unfortunate location because Baylands is just a gorgeous wildlife area, and now we have this airport right in the middle of it. That said, it's a really important part of our community. The medical flights to Stanford, transplant flights land there. We have to keep it. It's really critical. And I do agree with Pat Burt that 10 years from now, we're going to be shocked at how well electric airplanes work, just like Teslas were kind of very unique a while ago, and now they've become commonplace. And that's the hope for the airport, that we can coexist in a wildlife area.
All right, let's go on to another question. We are getting a little short on time for these. This is a heart and minds question. How can we meet our 80-30 goals without changing people's attitudes? What would you do to change attitudes about electrification? Oh, come on, nobody wants to take this one? Greer, you had your hand up first.
Well, I think a lot of it is going to, I would imagine many people in this room have been early adopters of various green technologies, whether it's our heat pump water heater or electric vehicles or solar installation. And I find one of the most impactful is when you are talking to your neighbors and your friends and saying, hey, you know, this heat pump water heater, it's saving me money. I'm able to do on-bill financing, et cetera. This is a great program. I've talked to many residents who are very hesitant about doing that. And then they started to talk to their neighbors who successfully went through the program and found a lot of success. A lot of us can relate to, right, electric vehicle adoption. When those first came out, many people were very hesitant. And then we talked to friends, we took test drives, we found out how great this new mode of transportation is. So it's going to rely on all of you to be able to spread the word and encourage your friends to be able to do that level of adoption.
Henry, you had your hand up?
Oh, okay. I've been a photovoltaics entrepreneur and advocate for over 50 years. And what I've learned through this is that we must make the technology better. Right now, we're still building on incremental changes. We haven't moved to the next generation of technologies. And the next generation is green photovoltaics. The current production process is polluting. You wouldn't want it in your city. The same way we didn't want chip production in Palo Alto. We moved it to Taiwan. And if we ask the Taiwanese, what is their solution to the pollution? The answer is they flush it into the ocean. So we need fundamental rethinking of the production process. And to do that, we need to move Stanford back into the business of photovoltaics research seriously. There used to be a photovoltaics research center, but they closed it down. Let's reopen that and make the priority green photovoltaics. And all rooftops, windows.
Thank you.
Could I just say I agree with the mayor about the changes to electrification. I think it's important to make stuff fun for people and to tell the success stories about how it worked for me and I've saved a lot of money, and I think we'll see people doing that as the community moves toward electrification.
Yeah, if you talk to anyone who's electrified, they're big fans. And as Greer mentioned, that's a really powerful way of doing it. But we can formalize that. We can have someone from utilities come out and explain, this is how much it costs and this is the best way to do it and here are the trade-offs. One of the big reasons people don't electrify is they just get overwhelmed. And if you had someone to guide you through the process, you'd be much more likely to do it.
Katie, did you want to go? At the mic.
Yep. So I find when I'm talking to residents who've made the change, it's because climate change is already here and they've realized the impacts of making these changes. A lot of people that I see switch to electric, it's because someone in their family had asthma and they needed to move away from a gas stove. And as somebody who used to work in housing, which is also changing people's minds on stuff, maybe 10 years ago, somebody would say, I don't want like a tall building next to my home. And now they're like, my kids and grandkids can't live here. That is housing for them. It's something that's personally impacted me. I live in a 100-year-old building downtown. It is not built for climate change. It overheats in the summers. So a lot of the seniors who live there have to leave during the summers because it gets too hot. We're also going to need to rely on good outreach programs in the city to share what programs the city has available to help people make these transition. And that includes, as we've seen with HRC, relying on our faith groups to help reach more people.
Can we do 30-second answers to get through just a few more questions?
Yeah.
Would that be okay?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, 30 seconds, please.
30 now. Okay. Well, we're doing a lot. And we're already on this road. We have a comprehensive communications plan. We have leaders in this room who have been leading on whole home demonstrations. We have our heat pump water heater program that is one-stop shopping, coming out and bringing people to do that. And one of the big things that we need to do is emphasize the health benefits. Most people do not know that there is a 40% higher incidence of childhood asthma in homes that have natural gas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had my hand up several minutes ago.
Okay, 30
Can I
seconds.
jump in?
30 seconds.
Okay, and it sounds like George does too.
All right.
So the thing about adoption is there's early adopters who will go for something that's shiny. But if you think about why did your grandma adopt the washing machine or the dishwasher? It's because it was easier. It's about time and convenience first and foremost. So for me, having an electric car is easier and more convenient because I don't have to fill it up. So I think if we can start advertising the convenience aspects as well, that would be helpful.
Great, thank you.
100% agree. 100% agree with Carrie. Electrification should be the natural choice, and it should be the rational economic choice. I also really agree with Pat Bird. Changing attitudes is a process, but it's already underway. The only thing I'd like to add is that we really need to strengthen our public engagement and bring more dialogue, empower the Palo Alto Student Climate Coalition, really lean on the Youth Climate Advisory Board, and take these issues in the communication we really need, really across a grassroots level through the entire community.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I will just say that I don't want to approach a problem like that by telling somebody they're wrong and that their concerns aren't valid. I would rather point out, which links to somewhat what everybody has said, but I guess we're all going to speak on all of these. So I would rather provide value and opportunity than tell somebody they're wrong and that their point of view is not valid.
All right. This is a longer question, but it comes from two sources. A person suggests a regional transportation funding measure to address the post-COVID cliff to ensure fast and affordable mass transit. And Berkeley is voting this fall on whether they should tax methane gas emissions from large commercial buildings. They hope to raise $25 million per year to be used for electrification. Should Palo Alto try such a tax measure? In 30 seconds.
Also, as we are in our lightning round, there will no longer be a yellow card.
It helps, actually. So I hadn't heard about that methane emission tax, and that's intriguing. I'd be interested in it. And the other part on the regional tax measure, I've been involved with those negotiations. We are still in the midst of that right now, and we're very hopeful that we will have one. One of the difficult points is how to distribute that, but I think we're going to get there.
Go next. I would just say that if we do institute new taxes, we need to make sure they're not regressive accidentally. We have to think it through. If we end up with the only people still using natural gas being, low-income apartments, then we need to make sure that they're not the ones having to pay that bill. So thanks.
Yeah, I think the idea of taxing methane is a really good idea. I do think we could go and take some of those proceeds and put it towards low-income conversions or incentives. And so that can solve the problem instead of causing a problem. The second thing is for the regional, it's really important that we have money for mass transit. We also have to make sure that all their business plans are appropriate and that the appropriate people are making the appropriate decisions, and not that one massive decision is shoving things down people's throats.
Okay, George?
Similarly agree on regional transit. We really need to fund transportation. It's a dire situation with fiscal cliffs across multiple agencies. I would really consider a commercial tax on methane. That's a bit less than 20, commercial natural gas is a bit less than 20% of our current emissions. And yeah, would strongly consider and presumptively favor a tax, though really the details need to be worked out.
Yeah, Henry?
I'd be very wary of any new taxes, especially ones that might be passed on to the consumers. And so I would look at that very carefully. As far as solving our problems, many of our problems can only be solved regionally. For example, Caltrain and the railroad tracks. We can't solve that individually as a city. We must work together with our neighboring cities and lobby the federal government for the infrastructure funds and the high-speed rail funds in order to put that train underground, end Suicide Alley, build a linear park.
Thank you, Henry. How do you plan to incorporate youth organizations into city climate policy? Yeah, Doria?
I don't know that we have to because they're doing such a great job right now. So just they need to keep it up. They're doing a great job.
Gary? And then Ann?
Thank you. Well, first of all, at least on my campaign, I've got interns and they have policy recommendation as their main job. And I want to hear from them. And so I would like to personally invite any youth that are listening right now to get involved. It can be my campaign or any of these campaigns. But more than that, I think there's a lot more going on in the city and opportunities to get involved. That's the organization that Avro's leading is a great way to get involved in climate action. So find your thing and go for it.
Thank you. Ann?
Yes, I am so thrilled to see all of the youth involved in the clubs and the organizations and what they're putting together. This is really, excuse me, their future. And I believe that we should have, to the extent that they want to be involved, a youth representative on every commission, on every board, on every committee, on everything to share their opinion with those of us who would like to hear them.
I just want to emphasize on the Human Relations Commission, the work of the Palo Alto Student Climate Coalition. It has just been absolutely essential to the city's research on climate in the city and what vulnerable communities are being impacted by it. And I'm really excited to see that work continued at the Youth Climate Council.
Pat, and then Keith?
Yes, in 2022, when we created the council committee on our SCAP process, we created a 5-person advisory group of community members, and I pushed to have one of those be from the Palo Alto Student Climate Coalition. Now with Councilmember Vinker, we've actually got staff to officially create the Palo Alto Youth Advisory Commission on Climate. One of the big things we've undertapped is leveraging those resources to have the students be the advocates to the parents through the school system.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, the biggest thing you can do to encourage people to be participatory is to take them seriously and take their opinions and act on them. And if you don't act on them, they'll feel like they're wasting their time and they'll stop doing it very quickly.
Great.
Youth mental health and well-being has been my top issue as mayor and one of the top issues of in my campaign. On night one of becoming mayor, I established the Youth Mental Health and Well-Being Task Force, and we were identifying what were key needs for our youth in this community. And one of those key needs was really having a voice at the table and being heard and included in our decision making. And nowhere else is that more important than on climate, which is going to disproportionately impact our young people. So very glad to see the city leading on creating this new youth climate advisory group and seeking more of that input.
George?
I'm really excited to empower the Youth Climate Advisory Board. I'm looking forward to the board working directly with the Utilities Commission, PTC, HRC, and City Council. I would also call upon the groups here, the groups sponsoring this event, the Bicycling Coalition, Canopy, other groups, to point and find high schoolers, bring them into your groups, and find opportunities for them to really lead on projects.
You all want to squeeze in the single-use plastic question before we go to closing arguments? Or should we go right to closing arguments?
I think we're running short on time, so we should
Okay.
move on.
There's a single-use plastic question that you could answer in your last 90 seconds. So now we're moving on to our closing statements. You have 90 seconds each for these, and Katie's going to start us off.
Thank you again to all the climate, transportation, and housing organizations hosting tonight. One issue we didn't talk about, and it's the work in housing that inspired me to run, is when residents are facing flooding or heat waves and how they navigate the city's resources. I was sitting in the office of this very church when I was also working my housing job and helping residents navigate those resources of, I'm a renter and my house just flooded. What are my next steps? Where can I go? And I bring that firsthand experience because I've seen when our community struggles, but I have also seen how much our community will fight when a neighbor is struggling, how they will work to have their back. And that is why I'm running, so that less of our residents can struggle and that City Hall can be a trusted resource.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all the groups that are here tonight for the work that you do on a regular basis. I think it's very clear that climate change is the overall issue that we should all care so much about. I had an opportunity to talk to my 25-year-old grandson, and I asked him what he worried about. And he said climate change without a hesitation. That's what he cares about, and that's what he thinks about in his life. And I would like to make sure that we all think that way, that we use climate change as a lens through which we gauge our decisions for the future. And I think that we can just not afford to slow down.
I'm Henry Etzkowitz, senior and a renter, an environmentalist, and an innovation scholar. And as an innovation scholar, I publish in the journal Sustainability. And on council, I'll bring forth fresh ideas and new perspectives to solve old problems in a way that we haven't thought of before. And there will be thoroughgoing solutions, not half measures. I will work to underground that train, to plant an urban forest, to grow sustainable housing that will be green, the way it is in Brazil. You can't even tell it's a high apartment house because it looks like a bunch of trees in a forest. This will be my promise to you, that I will be an innovative member of City Council. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for caring about our climate, caring about our environment, and caring about the civic process to get this done. On my campaign, two of my top priorities are climate goals. We need more housing. That's a big priority for me, and we need to develop it in a transit-oriented way, in a sustainable way, in a way that makes our community more inclusive and less dependent on cars. I also really care about mode shift. I care about supporting safe transportation. We need to adopt a Vision Zero goal with an actual timeline to eliminate bike and pedestrian deaths and serious injuries. And in doing so, we not only make our streets safer, we significantly improve climate outcomes, we bring more life into the streets. I'm proud to be endorsed by the League of Conservation Voters, by 350 Silicon Valley Action, by climate leaders like Larry Klein or Canopy co-founder Susan Rosenberg, by housing organizations like Peninsula for Everyone, and I'd be grateful to earn your vote. Thank you.
The world is getting a lot more dangerous. We're getting a lot more wildfires. more rainstorms, more creek flooding, sea level rise, and it's going to get worse. Even if we went carbon neutral tomorrow, it would continue to get worse. And so we are kind of behind the 8 ball. We have to act. We have to be proactive about those adaptations, about preventing wildfires. We also have to be very proactive about getting our carbon footprint reduced. And this is critical. We can't wait. This is the world that we're going to live for our children, and we have to improve it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with you all tonight and be surrounded by fellow climate activists within the room. I'm really proud of what it is that we've been able to accomplish over the last 4 years, but I'm acutely aware of the problems that we continue to face here in Palo Alto, from affordable housing to being able to close that 9% gap on our 80 by 30 goal by 2030. These are all going to take strong leadership in order to be able to move us forward. I think I've been able to show over the last 4 years that I've been able to be a leader that has advanced significant policies in areas like affordable housing and public safety. We currently have 1,100 housing units in the pipeline. About half of those are affordable, with significant more on the way. For a very long time, renter protections was something that wasn't really discussed at council. Now we have a whole host of renter protection policies that we have passed, and considering more, some examples: the rental registry, reducing the amount of time it takes for renter protections to be able to apply, reducing the security fee, et cetera. So I'm excited to continue to work on these issues. I hope to be able to earn your support and your vote. I know we didn't have enough time to be able to fully discuss all the issues, so I encourage you to go to my website, greerstone.com, to learn more. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone who came out tonight, and thank you for hosting us here, and thank you, Avro. After 38 years of living in this community and really deeply caring about it, I think that I know the community well. I have passion and integrity and the right experience to serve this community after 17 years on appointed boards and commissions. I can honestly say that I have not always succeeded in helping people when they have come to me to help with a problem they're having at their property or in their neighborhood. But I have never said, no, I'm not going to try. And that's the kind of commitment I have to helping people in this community. I think I have spent a lot of time working with other council members and other commission and board members. And I have a deep, deep appreciation for the legacy that has been left to us. When I moved here, I was really amazed by the wealth of amenities and opportunities in the city, the open spaces in the park, and we have a deep responsibility to care for those things for the next generation. So I hope you'll really place your trust in me and continue to let me do the thing that I really, really love, which is serving all of you.
Thank you. I am really honored to be here tonight, and I have enjoyed this discussion, but more than that, I've enjoyed seeing so many people show up for a climate discussion with candidates, and I think that's a great way to hold us accountable. I want to say that I am also very deeply committed to trying to make this a better, safer place, a more sustainable place, and to help us meet our climate action goals. I am endorsed by Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, Supervisor Joe Smidian, State Senator Josh Becker, and Assemblymember Mark Berman, and the Democratic Party. These are people who want to work with me and have me be a person that's representing you. And I want to work for you. So I hope that you'll consider voting for me. You can learn more, and you can sign up to meet with me at caryforcouncil.com, C-A-R-I, and spell out for. And in any case, I really enjoy this discussion. I'm available after if you want to talk some more. Thank you so much.
Well, my commitment to the environment and to climate protection has been longstanding and strong throughout. I was able to co-lead with colleagues the creation of our top leading climate policies. In 2015, I went to the Paris Climate Accords, attended the Conference of Mayors to be able to share best practices and learn best practices, because this city is at the cutting edge. We're inventing a new wheel, I should say. And when I left the council in 2017 through 2020, there was a drift, and our goal started being characterized by our staff and some of our council members as aspirational or a stretch goal and not a real goal. When I ran in 2020, I said, no, this is a real goal. We're going to be recommitted to it. It won't be easy, and we're going to tackle it. That's what's happened since then. These programs that we have today that are aimed at the strategic plan to actually meet our goal are because several of us have driven that, and we're going to continue that process. I think I have the experience, the vision, and the commitment to make this happen. So thank you very much, and thank you everyone here, because everyone here cares about this issue, and that's why you're here, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you, everybody. Can we give them a big hand? Just a quick word before I turn things over to Avro to close us out. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for running for council. I mean, it's just the democracy at work, and it's awesome to see, and it's so great that everybody on this stage is putting themselves out there and their ideas, and it's beautiful. So thank you so much. Thank you for our AV team again. Yeah, go ahead. And just a quick shout out, our facilities technician Javier and our office manager Tracy put up this stage, which is very heavy. Thank you to them. Avro.
Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. And I know that this was a lot of information to take in all at once, which is good for us because we are posting a recording of this on our YouTube. 350 Silicon Valley 4 is the account. Furthermore, we'd all like to let you know about an upcoming event that we are hosting that especially the 350 Silicon Valley team has been working to organize. It's a Clean Air at Home event, which happens to be on Clean Air Day, although no one knows what that is. And there's going to be free ice cream. There's going to be a lot of food. There's going to be families. It's going to be a lot of fun, so please show up. That's on Saturday, September 28th from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Mitchell Park Community Center.